For the past 2 years, I've collected on and off trophies from different Resident Evil games. One such game being RE2. I had finished the majority of the records and trophies, but there were still 2 left standing in my way to platinum, which was hardcore college student and a small carbon footprint. I attempted both trophies a couple of times in the past, but I would either become too lazy and not finish the run, or would suck too much and die. So today, I decided that I would finally go for them, starting with hardcore college student. Both trophies require me to finish the game, so if you've never played the game before, you'll be slightly spoiled on things like boss fights, but I'll be avoiding the story as much as possible. Okay, let's get into it. After my first death, I felt more confident than discouraged, because I started to remember more stuff about the game. I went through the dark hallway again, and this time I was able to make it out. Now that we had some time to catch our breath, I took a look into the notepad. It turns out that there is a secret passage that opens up when you put 3 medallions into the base of the goddess statue. The first medallion is really easy to get, as it's just right behind the goddess statue, so we put it in the slot easy peasy. Next 2 medallions, however, take a lot more work to get to. So before I got those, I went through the creepy hallway, then into the west office to get an attachment for my gun. This guy interrupted though, so I turned his head into tomato soup. I didn't want to go through more of the game without saving, so I decided to head to the dark room to do just that, making our first ever save. And before I left, I decided to develop this roll of film for a puzzle in the future. With those 2 things done, I headed up the stairs where I ended up spending way too much time on this puzzle and almost got grabbed by this dude. After that, I went all the way up to the 3rd floor to get the spades key. I had a few options for my next move here, but I ultimately decided to continue on the 3rd floor, which led me into the library. There, we obtain a red book and unlock a door. I quickly solved the puzzle and obtained a royal staff, but only kept the jewel. And got the key card, which we would use in the locker room to get us the grenade launcher. While there, I used our computer key to get some other loot and shot some zombies in the kneecaps. We then went to the east side of the police station to get our next key item, bolt cutters. This would finally let us into the east office, and let me tell you, this place has an abundance of loot, which includes 2 key items, a fuse and a red wheel. I couldn't carry all this loot, so I unbarricaded the door. Unfortunately, some zombies took it as an invitation, so I gave them a little firework as a present. I used the fuse to open the shutter, dumped all my excess stuff, and went back to get the rest of the stuff. Then, did a well-deserved save. Getting back to our main objective to collect the medallions, I first went for the one in the lounge that I should have collected ages ago. But before that, I proceeded to spend way too much time killing the zombie. Nevertheless, the second medallion was complete. Also, side note, I moved these heavy bookshelves for a future errand. Our final medallion requires us to make a bomb. To do this, we must first go through the creepy hallway for the second time, which surprisingly I breezed through, and instead of jumping through the window like last time, we would instead use bolt cutters to get inside the room to obtain our bomb. The next step requires us to revisit the locker room. Using our red wheel from earlier, we can turn off the steam, but I forgot the wheel, so I had to go back to the chest. Moving forward, we do have a looker, but I ignore him for now. And in the office, we get the battery for the bomb and a code for the west office safe. Now with our fully assembled bomb, we're ready to get our next medallion. I did try to walk past the licker again, but this time he wasn't gonna go down without a fight. So I shot him in the face and immediately ran to safety. Some people may think this is cowardice, but I like to say, I ain't taking no chances, man. Took one more shot to fully finish him off, and now the path was clear. We walked into the library, and all I had to do was climb up the ladders and blow some stuff up. But like always, I decided to gather some loot before I did anything important. So, after running around and getting a few more things, I climbed up those ladders and into the storage room that was holding our lovely medallion hostage. We gave us some good old American freedom, then acquired our final medallion. Now, we have successfully gathered all 3 medallions. However, we cannot celebrate yet, as after you blow up the cell, a licker comes to say hello. But taking care of it was fairly easy, so no biggie. And now, it was finally time to leave this place. I ended up finishing the first part of the game with only 1 death, which was way less than I was expecting, and now, having no way of turning back, I ventured deeper into the secret passage, which leads us to our first boss fight. The best way to take care of him is actually by using the knife, but unfortunately, I completely forgot about this method, and it was already midway through the fight when I realized my mistake. I figured that I spent so much ammo that I might as well keep going, so I kept running around and shot him until he tumbled over the railing. After our boss fight, our mission is to get a parking garage keycard, so first, I check out the door closest to us, which leads to an elevator. Unfortunately, it is not turned on, and to get it working, we must first get the diamond key to open up the elevator control room. So, I jogged back to the parking garage and went through the other door to get that key. This is probably one of the scariest parts of the game, as you need to dodge quite a few lickers. I decided to ignore the first one we passed by and headed straight for the morgue. I open every single drawer as I am a thorough person, and we find various things, but most importantly, we find the diamond key. This key must have been this guy's prized possession, because as soon as I took it, he immediately became upset. The zombie by the door wanted to join the party too, so I shot him with the fire grenade and shimmied past him. I tried to do the same with the looker, but since there were two of them now, I had no choice but to turn back. And apparently, this zombie must have lived in a volcano, as bro brushed off the fire grenade like nothing, and snuck up on me. When I went back into the room, for some reason, the lickers both decided to chill on the wall. Luckily, I was able to make my escape, but then I got ambushed by a third licker when I ran into the hall. I did have a clear chance to escape, but I realized that I'd rather get this section done and over with, so I went into the firing range to get a car key and some other useful stuff. We did take a few more bites, and running low on heals, I was getting a little nervous. But fortunately, nothing got in our way when we walked back. After putting Claire through all that, I felt it best to immediately just head to Chief Iron's room. So I unlocked the control room and was able to turn on the elevator.
Nice.
After a nice walk to his office, I quickly healed. Then, I went back to the parking garage where I got my part for the grenade launcher and finally used our car key, where in the trunk, we find a new pistol. Going back to his office, we check out his private collection room, where behind bars, we find a parking garage keycard. To open this cell, we need to get 2 electronic parts to fix the circuit. Further in the back, we find this weird portrait that turned out to be a disguise for the heart key. Now that I had both the diamond and the heart key, I spent a few minutes planning my next move, and decided that I would first head down the stairs. Then boarded up this window cause this zombie can be annoying. Using the heart key, we enter the interrogation room that gives us the jewel box. Then, experience one of the best jump scares in the game. Heading back to the chief's office, we combine the jewel from earlier with the box. Inside, we find a badge which can give us some cool stuff later on. Next, we went up the stairs this time, where I unlocked the door with the heart key, which gave us our first electronic part. The next item that I wanted to get was the big wheel, but this zombie unexpectedly lunged at me and took a bite, and I was a little upset. I was thinking on killing one of the zombies in the room, but now it was official, and I quickly finished him off. Then, we grabbed our big wheel. After putting a few items in the chest, I went outside where the helicopter was still engulfed in flames, despite the weather. So, we then go and change the direction of the drain, I think, and are able to smother the fire. Now that the fire was out, it was time to finally meet Mr. X. I threw a flashbang at him and it literally did nothing. So of course, I panicked, a little, but thankfully, I had a second flash grenade that did the trick. Key in hand, I walked towards the library and entered the laundry room. Luckily this time, I did not spend so long solving the puzzle, and we get our computer key. Mr. X didn't want us to get lonely, so he followed us to the locker room. I killed the zombie inside the room and quickly typed in all my codes. I was feeling pretty brave, so I ran past the liquor towards the record room. Using our heart key, we were able to get a jack. Then, with pure luck and maybe a little bit of skill, I was able to get out of there without getting a single scratch. After visiting the box again, I immediately went to the library. Moving these bookshelves would create a makeshift bridge, which leads us to the rest of the 3rd floor. Unfortunately, someone would interrupt us. So after some back and forth, Mr. X finally decided to take a break and we were able to make our makeshift bridge. Not gonna lie, up there with the liquors in the basement, this is one of the most stressful parts of the game, so having it done was a real relief. And after the pretty close encounters I've had, I decided that I needed to get some more guns, so I headed for the STAR's office. Using our badge from earlier, which was also a secret USB stick, we plug it into the computer and are rewarded with a new submachine gun. Now that I had collected all my stuff and gotten the hard parts out of the way, it was time to go into the clock room. On our long walk, we did have a few zombies who kept getting in our way, so I made sure that they were really dead. With a little bit of running around, we put the cogs in the right place. This caused the clock to start ringing and gave us our electrical part in the most dramatic way possible. Now, with both electrical parts collected, all we had to do was fix the circuit. It took me only a few minutes, and bada bing, bada boom, we got our keycard. In this next section, we switch to playing as Sherry. There is no combat whatsoever, as all we need to do is some parkour and lots of running to escape the orphanage. Our first goal is to get out of this room, and whoever made this makeshift prison cell severely underestimated us, as we escaped it in under 2 minutes. We then play the world's easiest game of hide and seek, and somehow he does not find us waddling across the floor.
Show yourself!
This section is quick and easy, but if you mess it up, it's pretty annoying to redo, so I used my brain's maximum power to focus. Switching back to Claire and the keycard finally being in our hands, we take one last walk through the parking garage as it was finally time to step foot out of the police station. Mr. X must have gotten tired of being stuck here too, as he decided to walk with us through the street, but unfortunately we lost him after walking into an alleyway. We said hi to some of the locals, and I didn't understand why they couldn't have just had pugs or Boston Terriers instead of these guys. But nevertheless, we reach the orphanage and we complete this mini section.
A few moments later.
Next, we begin our segment in the sewers, because every Resident Evil game has to have one. I really feel bad for Claire here, as most of the time I get lost and make her walk through even more sewage. Luckily, I didn't this time, and up ahead, we arrive at an office room where we get ourselves together and obtain the confusing map of the sewers. Basically, our goal here is to collect 3 electronic plugs, then put them into their respective place to open this big vault door. Walking away from the office, on our left, we find the tool, which is very important as it lets us open the majority of the doors in the sewers. On our right, we find a safe, and inside is a pistol part that lets us shoot magnum bullets. When we eventually head to the lower part of the sewers, we encounter some zombies, which aren't really a problem for us anymore, but I made sure to grab a grenade as we would begin encountering something that is. Luckily, the G-monster does not grab us, and we're able to take the lift up. But then we accidentally went a little overkill when taking care of this zombie. Just outside this room is where the Rook plug is located, but I decided to leave it there for now. Further down the path is where we meet our second G-monster, and luckily it went down easily. Using the tool from earlier, we open up the door and walk down one of the longest flights of stairs I've seen, then obtain a key which would open up the 2 doors from earlier, but before that I jogged back to the safe room where I cleaned up my inventory and saved. On our way back to the Rook plug, I somehow walked past the G without getting grabbed again, then accidentally tested my magnum bullet on a zombie. Inside the first room, we find a large gunpowder, which I would use to make acid rounds later, and since we didn't need to use the bridge anymore, we took the Rook plug with us. The second door I unlocked has a secret elevator behind a large filing cabinet, and when you use it, you actually end up back at the secret exit. Then with the tool, you can open up the secret passage where you can go all the way back through the police station if you wanted to. But the run was getting a little long, so I decided to not backtrack this time. But I still made sure to grab the machine gun part before the entrance of the elevator. Venturing back down into the sewers, our first order of business is to get the King and Queen plug. The path is really gross and full of G-monsters who were getting pretty annoying as I was running low on ammo, so I had to take some hits to move past them. The electrical room is like a mini maze, where you gotta plug in the King and Queen plugs around different electrical breakers, and saving you the tedious details, we're able to get the spark shot and take the 2 plugs home with us. The spark shot works really well against the Gs when you actually hit them, and it pretty much one-shots them no matter what, which is really nice. Now that we had gathered all the plugs, all that was left to do was solve the puzzle, but before going through the big door, I made sure to get ready for our upcoming boss fight. When he first arrives, he gives you a little jump scare and claws through the roof, which does a lot of damage. But if you just stand and wait at this spot, it becomes a bit awkward as you just have to wait for him to stop having a tantrum. When he's done, he'll come rip off the door where you can easily walk by him because he's stuck in his animation. So we keep jogging until we reach our fighting arena, which as you see has a huge crane thing. And unlike our last boss fight where we shoot the crap out of him, in this one we have to shoot the crap out of him and then hit him off with the cargo. But if you're not careful, you can end up like me. On my second try, I was a little more careful and he fell to his death like a Disney villain. And that pretty much concludes our section in the sewers, and we begin our final part of the game in the lavatory. We begin this section by trudging through the cafeteria, which was full of zombies, but we're able to exploit their weakness by climbing up some ladders. Then, going through the vents, we enter the sleeping quarters and steal a blue keycard, which lets us go through the blue doors. Oh, what the fuck! But make sure you're paying attention when you're going through them. Now, being able to go deeper into the facility, we activate a bridge towards the east. We actually want to go west, but that requires a purple keycard, which we do not have. But this dead guy does, so to loosen him up, we gotta give this tree some drugs. However, one dose is not enough, which leads us to our next objective, to create a second dose. Unfortunately, this is where we meet a new enemy type. You can shoot their pus sacs, which stops them from moving for like 10 minutes, but to fully get rid of them, you have to either burn or electrocute them. So to prepare for this, I headed back to the safe room and got my machine gun. This proved to be useful as I was able to get the code for the ladder with minimal trouble. Taking the ladder down, we find a couple of different things in the basement. First, we need to restore power to the basement, and second, we find another code stuck underneath a trophy. The item we needed to restore the power was up the stairs, which loops all the way back to the safe room, so I took some more ammo before typing the new code in, which unlocked the drug testing lab, where we got our second dose of juice, but to have it fully ready, a second step was necessary to freeze it. But on my way to do so, my path was interrupted by a plant guy. This made me appreciate my obsession with saving, and it gave me a bloodthirsty wrath, which ended up in me electrocuting and burning all of them to dust. After I was done, I redid the puzzle and gained my bottle of juice back. Continuing where we left off last time, I climbed down into the basement once again and found out that the spark shot works great against liquors as well. The zombies in the basement were also in the way, so I cleaned them up before turning the power back on. Now with the power restored, we freeze our juice and it's finally ready to spray on the plant. However, I made sure to save beforehand as a couple of plant dudes will spawn after we get the purple keycard. Thankfully, I didn't have any trouble getting past them this time. Now with the purple keycard, we're finally given access to the west area. And now, after making him patiently wait, we were back for round 3 for this dude. Of course, before we entered, I saved and stuffed as many guns as I could down my pockets, as with every evolution, he became tankier and tankier. Now, this dude has 2 wing-like arms which he can use to throw huge tubes and put you at critical with a single hit. Honestly, I thought that I was dead multiple times in the fight, but after shooting his goop eyes enough times, he went down. We are then rightfully awarded the violet keycard, which gives us VIP access to everything, but we'll have to explore this place another time as everything was going to shit. There were explosions left and right, plant dudes falling out of the air, and we even had an epic countdown telling us how long we had until we had to get the fuck out of there. Regardless, we still had one last job to do, which was to take this guy down to hell. This was definitely not the hardest boss fight, but it was probably the most nerve-wracking, as with every minute that passed by, I was running lower and lower on ammo. It got to the point where I literally had no more ammo left. My sole hope was a single grenade. Somehow, with sheer luck, I was able to take him down, and we finished our game at 420 and obtained the Hardcore College Student Trophy. Hardcore College Students Trophy. Huh, that's a mouthful. But anyways, now we move on to our last trophy, a small carbon footprint. This is probably the weirdest and probably the most annoying trophy in the game, as the description reads, take 14,000 steps or fewer in one playthrough. Why is this a challenge? I do not know. I actually attempted the challenge a few years ago, but failed by around 2,000 steps. Not wanting to do this stupid challenge again, I chose the B scenario as it requires less walking, and chose to play as Leon because I didn't want to play as Claire again. I also used the infinite pistol and combat knife because again, I didn't want to redo the challenge again. And since Leon's B campaign is pretty much identical to Claire's, I'm going to be skimming through most of the challenge as it's just the same thing. My strategy was simple, plan out my routes the best I can and mag dump every zombie in sight, then frequently check the record to keep track of my steps. I also made sure to be conservative of what I picked up as I did not want to run back and forth to the chest like I usually do. The first time around in the RPD, I made sure to grab the hip pouch for more inventory space and the shotgun. Not much was different when collecting the medallions except the codes are a little different, and Mr. X shows up early. Despite Mr. X though, we finished this section quickly at around 2,000 steps. Next up was the fight with the dude, and this time I wanted to try the knife strat, which ended up working pretty good until he grabbed me and I lost my infinite knife. Which I didn't want to happen, so I just reloaded my save. And then I realized that I could get the Magnum right now, so I decided to put a pause on the fight and do that instead. We already had the box, so we went to place the book into the statue's arm. This is one of the parts that's a little different in the B scenario, as after you get the jewel, a lurker spawns right behind you. And 2 seconds later, Mr. X came to remind me that he exists. And even so, now with the badge, we got our Magnum and prepared for round 2 with this dude. I tried the knife strat once more, but 5 minutes into the fight, I literally made the same exact mistake of stabbing him with the infinite knife, and I had to restart once more. When we loaded back, I grabbed the magnum part and headed for the dude. This time, I was extra careful. If it looked like he was about to grab me, I would switch to a grenade. I made sure to keep my distance as well when he did the big swings. Then, when he was super close to death, I pulled out the knife and was finally able to finish him off. This boss fight was a bit of a struggle, but we get this cutscene next. So, worth it. This is also one of the parts that is drastically different from Claire's run, as instead of solving the electric puzzle in Chief Iron's office, we have to solve it in the underground prison. We still go through the morgue area, but instead of lickers there are dogs, and instead of riding the elevator up to Chief Iron's room, we instead open up this door which leads back to the main RPD. Gathering the electronic parts is pretty easy, besides the scary hallway and the library bridge. In Claire's scenario, we get the heart key and can avoid this hallway, but since Leon gets the clover key, we must walk through the scary hallway which includes 2 lickers, 2 zombies, and who can forget Mr. X. Mind you, my strategy for this was terrible, as I didn't have one. I just ran through the hall and hoped for the best, which kinda worked out, but I ended up using all my defensive items and had no way to stop Mr. X in the library, so I had to restart. This time, I decided to actually be quiet, and things went pretty smoothly. The journey back, not so much. Nevertheless, we still made it out of there, and now actually being prepared, I was able to down Mr. X long enough to complete the bridge, even if it did take a couple of tries. Can you just be down? Thank you. Then the rest of the section was pretty light work, as we got the electronic part from the tower and quickly solved the puzzle. And also just a quick thank you to Train 067, as I was able to get the hardly any resistant record first try. We finally had the garage keycard in hand, but all hell broke loose, as turning the power back on let all the zombies escape out of their cells. But no matter, we still escaped the RPD. Also, another notable difference between Claire and Leon's scenario is that instead of playing hide and seek with Chief Irons, we get to play tag with a mutated crocodile. Although not for long. This rightfully makes Leon exhausted, so while he took a nap, we switched to playing as Ada. Her section is actually quite short. We use this hacking gun thing to rewire electrical stuff and run a lot, which at times can be stressful, like here, when you're trying not to be burned alive. Anyways, Leon wakes up from his nap quickly, and we prepare for our journey in the sewers, and having about half of our steps still left, things were looking good. Going through the sewers with Leon was pretty similar to when we went through it with Claire. I first went for the King and Queen plug, where we again encountered some resistance with the G monsters, and lost all of our healing items, which kinda sucked, but we obtained the flamethrower which I would use later on to cook the vegetable dudes. Although it would use up some extra steps, I decided to get some extra loot with the sewer key and obtained the last plug. Everything was just so much easier when the difficulty is at normal and you have infinite pistol ammo. Once again, the vault door puzzle took me like 15 minutes to solve, which used up like 200 steps walking back and forth, so I reloaded my save and solved the puzzle with minimal steps this time. And after opening the door, this guy decides to rip a hole in the ceiling once again. He did try his best to be scary, but was no match against the shipping container. Entering the laboratory once again, I was able to get revenge by killing the armored zombie who scared the crap out of me. It's pretty impossible to get this achievement by gathering the codes, so I technically cheated and searched them all up, which meant we only needed to go around the West Laboratory once, and I obtained the Genius Chemist record thanks to Train 067. The section was pretty easy thanks to the flamethrower, and even though Mr. X comes after us, he didn't even come close to catching up. At this point, I was getting a little nervous, as we were reaching close to our step limit, so I made sure to grab everything I could for our next fight. I try not to dodge as much as possible to reduce steps, but it was pretty impossible when he's throwing a big ass tube at you. Eventually though, I was able to get him crispy enough where he promptly fell over. Now, it was the final part of the game. We had the random explosions, the countdown, and Mr. X chasing us down, cause he can't get enough of Leon. So far, the game has been going pretty smoothly, thanks to playing on normal difficulty and the infinite pistol. However, our final showdown with Tyrant would put a pause on the gameplay. During our last fight, I used up almost all of my resources, causing me to only have a handful of useful stuff left. That wasn't scary enough for me, his entrance definitely was. The fight was awful, as the only thing you can do is run around in a very tiny circle, considering how huge this guy's grasp is. Then the arena becomes even smaller with falling rubble, and on top of that, he then does a one-hit move which I died to twice. But after thinking it over and gathering some brain cells, I just remembered to put a few flashbangs in my inventory and used those when he was about to do the one-hit KO. Which worked as a rocket launcher slides down. I almost died reaching for it though, but luck was on my side and he was finally down. Even after all of the back pain, I think I was going to miss him. However, we didn't have time to be sentimental, because this place was still going down, and we were able to catch the train before it leaves. Although we soon realized that we're not alone on it. We head to the back of the train where we find the persistent G-monster, which is so deformed that I literally don't know what I was looking at. So I used everything I had left and he finally disappeared into flames. And after going through hell and back, Leon is rewarded with a warm American welcome. It felt good finally having Platinum after like 2 years. Gone to Platinum! These achievements weren't very hard, but it did require some patience at times. I still have a few more records to tackle, like the even harder S+ hardcore runs, where you only get 3 saves, and the Gunslinger record and Ghost Survivors. So if you would like to see me finish those as well, let me know, cause I would love to do them. So thank you so much for watching. Mata ne!